If you hear knocking after midnight on New Year's, don't open the door. If you enjoy slow burn horror with a nasty payoff, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because these stories hit different in the dark. And before we begin, a quick warning. When this ends, you might find yourself listening for sounds in your hallway that you've never noticed before. New Year's Eve always sounded like permission. Permission to be louder than usual, to laugh too hard, to drink too fast, to pretend the future was a door you could kick open with enough fireworks and confidence. That year, I didn't have any of that. I had a kettle that wheezed when it boiled, a living room that smelled faintly of dust and old carpet cleaner, and a stack of unopened Happy New Year texts that I didn't have the energy to answer. My friends were out somewhere under lights and music and crowds. I told them I was sick, and it wasn't even a complete lie. There are illnesses you can't cough up. Outside my window, the street was wet and shining. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, leaving the pavement slick like black glass. The streetlights cast pale halos that trembled in puddles. Cars passed occasionally, tires whispering on the road, a soft hiss that sounded like someone trying to calm down. I'd moved into the flat 3 weeks earlier. It was the kind of place you take when it's available and cheap, and you're too tired to be picky. The landlord had been friendly in that brisk, transactional way, smiling without warmth, already looking past you to the next problem. Quiet building, he'd said, jangling keys. Mostly older tenants. You'll like it. Maybe he meant the building was quiet in the way a cemetery is quiet. I had one neighbor I'd spoken to, a woman across the hall who always seemed to be carrying something: groceries, laundry, a folded umbrella. She moved like she was trying not to take up space. She nodded once, and her eyes had flicked to my door as if she expected it to open on its own. On the day I moved in, she'd paused, lips parting, as if she'd decided she should say something. "If you hear knocking," she'd said softly, and then she'd stopped, as though the rest of the sentence tasted wrong. I'd smiled, polite, confused. "Sorry." She swallowed. On New Year's. I waited, but she didn't continue. Her fingers tightened on the handles of her bags. The hallway smelled like damp wool and old paint. "Just don't," she finished, almost too quiet to catch. And then she turned and hurried down the stairs, leaving me in the hall with my boxes, and the strange feeling that I'd missed a joke everyone else understood. I thought about that as the night crept toward midnight. I tried to distract myself with a film, but my attention kept slipping away, snagging on little things. The way the radiator clicked and sighed like it was thinking, the soft groan of the building settling, the occasional distant cheer from someone's party through an open window. At 10 to midnight, I turned the volume down until the TV was little more than moving light, because the closer it got, the more I became aware of the silence underneath everything, the kind of silence that isn't empty, just waiting. I made tea I didn't want and carried it to the living room. The mug warmed my hands. The steam curled into my face and fogged my glasses. On the wall above the TV, there was an old clock with thick black hands. It had come with the flat, like a leftover thought. I'd replaced the battery once already, and it still ticked a little unevenly, as if it resented being made useful. When the minute hand crawled toward 12, the air felt different. Not colder, thicker. Like the building had taken a breath and was holding it. The first fireworks burst somewhere in the distance. A muffled thump and a faint hiss. Then another. Then the city began to stutter with light and sound, each pop and crack bouncing between buildings. I watched the second hand approach the top of the clock, and I realized, absurdly, that I didn't want the year to change. Not because I loved the old one, but because I didn't trust what came after. 10, 9, 8. Outside, voices rose, counting down in a chorus that sounded more like a chant the closer it got. 7, 6, 5. My tea went untouched. My throat was tight. 4, 3, 2. I stared at the door to my flat. 1. The world erupted. A sudden, messy bloom of cheers from the street. Fireworks punching holes in the night. Distant shouting. Car horns. A wave of sound rolling over everything, bright and chaotic and alive. And then, almost immediately, the noise began to thin, like a crowd moving away. The fireworks still popped, but now there were pockets of silence between them. Cheering faded into laughter. Doors closed. Music turned down. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Maybe that was all. Maybe the warning had been superstition. Maybe the neighbor across the hall had been the kind of person who collected odd rules to feel safer. I took a sip of tea. It was bitter from steeping too long. That's when I heard it. A knock. Not on my door at first. Down the hall somewhere. A sharp rap, 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 like knuckles on wood. The sound cut through the remaining fireworks so cleanly that my spine tightened. It wasn't the casual knock of a neighbor borrowing sugar. It wasn't the hollow thud of someone bumping a door with a shoulder. It was deliberate, measured, patient. I froze, mug halfway to my mouth. Silence followed. Then another knock, slower this time. Rap, rap, rap. I set the mug down so carefully, it didn't clink. I leaned forward, listening, trying to place it. The building was old, and sound traveled weirdly, bouncing through vents and stairwells. But this was in the hallway. I forced myself to breathe. People were drunk. People did stupid things on New Year's. Someone could be knocking on the wrong door. Then the knocks started moving. Not footsteps, no shuffling, no heavy tread. Just the knocks, spaced like footsteps might be. A door farther down the hall, rap, rap, rap. A pause. Another door, rap, rap, rap. The rhythm stayed the same. My skin prickled. I stood and padded toward my peephole, careful not to let the floorboards creak. The The hallway light outside was on, a dim yellow glow that always made the corridor look slightly stained. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Empty hallway, no one. My stomach dropped. I pulled back, heart stuttering. Maybe I looked at the wrong moment. Maybe whoever it was had stepped into the stairwell. I leaned in again, squinting. Still empty. And then, right outside my door, rap, rap, rap. The sound vibrated through the wood. My breath caught so hard it hurt. I stumbled back a step, staring at the door like it might swell outward. The knocks weren't loud, but they were close enough that my bones recognized them as an intrusion. I didn't answer. I didn't move. Outside, the hallway light hummed faintly. Then a voice spoke. It was quiet, right at the other side of the door, as if someone had put their mouth close to the wood and whispered, "Happy New Year." The voice wasn't quite male or female, thin, smooth, held too steady. It sounded like a recording that had learned to mimic warmth without understanding it. My mouth went dry. I didn't respond. Another whisper, same calm tone. Open. The word landed like something heavy placed on a table. I backed away until my shoulders touched the wall. My hands were cold and slick. I wanted to tell myself I was imagining it. I wanted to laugh at myself, to shake my head and think, "You've been alone too long. It's fireworks. It's your nerves." But the voice had been real enough to shape the air. Outside, something scraped, lightly, like a fingertip trailing along the doorframe. Then the knocking began again, but different. Not 3 raps, just one slow knock. Knock. A pause long enough for my heart to beat twice. Knock. Another pause. The sound was careful, like it knew exactly how much noise it could make without alerting anyone else. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. The sudden vibration almost made me scream. I lunged for it, snatching it up. A text from my friend Ellis. "Happy New Year, you alive?" My fingers shook so badly, I hit the wrong keys twice before managing. "Someone's outside my door," Ellis replied almost immediately. "Lol, you sure you not just paranoid? Check peephole." I looked at the door. The peephole felt like an eye I didn't want to use. Another knock. Knock. The voice whispered again, patient. "I know you're in there." My stomach turned, as if I'd swallowed ice water. I typed, I looked. No one there, but they're knocking and talking. The 3 dots appeared as Ellis typed. Outside, the scraping sound returned faint, slow, circling the edge of the door, like a fingernail tracing a shape. My door handle twitched, just slightly, like someone testing it, not turning it fully, just enough to make the metal click. Ellis texted, "Call the cops." My thumb hovered over the call screen, and then I realized something that made my chest tighten. If I called, I'd have to speak. If I spoke, the voice outside might hear me, and if it heard me, it would know exactly where my mouth was, behind the wood. Like it mattered. That thought was irrational, but it sank hooks into me anyway. handle twitched again, a little harder. The voice, "It's cold out here." I stared at the door, my vision tunneling. "I just want to come in." The words were soft and almost pleading now, and that made it worse. It made it feel like the thing outside was trying on emotions the way someone tries on clothes in a shop, checking the fit. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "Go away." The scraping stopped. Silence. My breath sounded too loud. Then, from the other side of the door, the voice whispered with sudden clarity, as if it had been waiting for me to speak. "There you are." A shock ran through me so sharp, I almost dropped my phone. It heard me. It heard me. The knocking changed again. Faster now, not frantic, but purposeful. Knock, 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 knock. It wasn't asking anymore. It was signaling. Like a code. I backed into the living room, phone clutched to my chest. My brain went through options like a desperate slideshow. Call the police, hide, run, shout, do something. I chose the simplest. I locked the chain on the door. My hands shook as I slid it into place, the metal clinking too loud. The chain felt pathetic, like a thin necklace against a hungry throat. The knocking stopped instantly. The quiet that followed was so complete it felt staged. And then, very softly, the voice said, "Good." That single word made my blood run colder than fear ever had, because it sounded satisfied. I stumbled away from the door again, my eyes stinging. My phone buzzed. "Ellis again, are you calling?" I typed, "I put chain on." It said, "Good." Ellis replied, "What?" Another message came in right after. "I'm calling you. Answer." My phone started to ring, loud in the hush. The sound shattered the stillness like glass. I fumbled, thumb slipping, and accepted the call. "Ellis," I started, voice cracking. But I didn't get to say anything else, because the moment I spoke, the voice outside my door spoke too, perfectly timed with mine, matching my tone like an echo. "Ellis." I froze so hard my neck hurt. On the phone, Ellis said, "Hello, hello. What's happening?" And from the hall behind the wood, the voice repeated in sync, "Hello, hello. What's happening?" My knees went weak. It wasn't just mimicking words. It was mimicking now. Ellis's voice trembled. Is that someone with you?" The hallway voice answered at the exact same time I did, like it had practiced being me. "No," except I hadn't said no. I stared at my own mouth, lips parted, realizing the no had come from the hall. Ellis went silent for a beat, then, Okay, listen. Lock everything. Don't open the door. I'm calling the police right now. Stay on the phone with me." My throat tightened so much I could barely swallow. "Okay." The voice outside, "Okay." I clamped a hand over my mouth. "Ellis, are you alone?" I nodded instinctively, then remembered he couldn't see. I forced out a whisper. "Yes." The voice outside, "Yes." Ellis's breathing got fast. "That's not funny. Stop. Just stop doing that." "I'm not," I choked, tears hot in my eyes. I'm not. The voice outside, gentle now, almost soothing. I'm not. Ellis said, don't talk to it. Don't say anything. Just breathe. I tried. The voice outside breathed too, audible through the door. A slow inhale, slow exhale, like it was practicing being calm. And then the chain on my door tightened. Not because I touched it, because something on the other side pulled. The metal groaned. My heart slammed against my ribs. The voice whispered, still calm, still patient. It doesn't matter if you don't open it. The chain pulled again, harder. The screws in the frame creaked. Ellis's voice rose in panic. What is that sound? Are they trying to break in? I couldn't answer. My body refused to move. I was rooted to the spot, staring at the chain as it trembled. The voice outside continued, conversational, as if it were explaining a simple rule. New Year's is when doors are thinnest. The chain jerked violently. One screw popped, leaving a tiny crater in the wood. I made a sound that might have been a sob. Ellis shouted, "Get away from the door. Go to a room with a lock." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, but I couldn't stop looking. The chain pulled once more, slow and firm, and the remaining screws began to ease out, like teeth being loosened. I backed into the hallway inside my flat, toward the bedroom. My fingers fumbled for the doorknob. The bedroom door had a simple lock, one of those flimsy ones you turn with a thumbnail. I slipped inside and locked it, then pressed my back against the door like my weight could hold it. Ellis was talking fast now, telling me the police were on their way, asking for my address, telling me to stay quiet. I gave him the address in a whisper. But as soon as I did, the voice outside my bedroom door whispered it too, word for word, like it had been listening in the same room. That was when I understood something that made me feel sick. It wasn't in the hallway anymore. It was in my flat. Not physically. There were no footsteps, no creaking boards. But the voice was closer now, as if the walls had become thin paper. It knocked on my bedroom door. Rap, rap, rap. The sound was gentle, almost polite. Ellis's voice became small. "It's in there with you." "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't know where it is." The voice outside the bedroom. "I don't know where it is." Ellis said, "Stop. Stop talking." I clamped my mouth shut again, eyes wide, staring at the handle of the bedroom door. The handle began to turn, slowly, not forced, not violent, like someone who had all the time in the world. The lock clicked, holding. The handle turned back. Then again. Testing. The voice outside the door whispered, almost kindly, "You shouldn't have answered." My vision blurred with tears. Ellis said something, my name, I think, but it sounded far away. All I could hear was that voice. "People used to know better," it continued. "They used to put bowls of salt by their doors. They used to keep their mouths shut until the year settled. The handle stopped moving. Silence stretched, long enough for my heart to slow just a fraction. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it didn't sound like itself. It sounded like my mother. Not a perfect imitation, just close enough to rip something open inside me. "Honey," it called softly on the other side of the bedroom door. "It's me. Are you okay?" My throat convulsed. My mother lived 4 hours away. She would never be here. She didn't even know my address yet. But the voice carried her cadence, the gentle upward lilt she used when she was worried. Ellis's voice snapped in my ear, urgent. "Don't you dare open it. It's not her. It's not anyone." The voice, my mother's voice, grew warmer, more convincing. "I'm worried about you," it said. "I had a bad feeling. Please open the door, just for a second." The handle turned again, slowly, like it was demonstrating how easy it would be. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the words slid through my fingers like smoke. "I'm right here," the voice coaxed. "You don't have to be alone in the new year." Something in me, a starving part, the part that had been sick with loneliness, twitched toward it. And the voice felt that twitch like a hand on a fishing line. The knocks came again, soft and rhythmic. "Rap, rap, rap." "Open," it said, still in my mother's voice. "Open, sweetie." I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. Ellis was almost shouting. "Listen to me. Listen. It's copying voices. It wants you to open the door. Don't open it." My knees shook. My whole body shook. The bedroom felt too small, the air too close. The voice outside sighed, my mother's sigh, tired and affectionate. "If you don't open it," it said, "I'll come in anyway." Then the voice changed again. This time it sounded like me. My own voice, exactly every inflection, every breathy edge. "Please," it said, using my voice. "Please open the door." I froze, horrified. It was like hearing a recording of myself, begging for something I didn't want. Ellis gasped on the phone. "Oh my God." And then I heard something else, underneath the voice. A sound that didn't belong. A faint, wet, dragging noise, like a cloth being pulled across carpet. It moved slowly past my bedroom door, as if something was slithering by just out of sight. My stomach twisted. I whispered barely, "Ellis, I hear something." The voice outside whispered at the same time, "Ellis, I hear something." Ellis swore, breath ragged. "They're almost there. They're dispatching officers. Stay quiet. Can you get to a window? Can you climb out?" I glanced at the bedroom window. It was shut tight, beads of rain clinging to the glass. Beyond it was the street, 3 floors down, slick and shining. No fire escape, just a drop. The voice outside the door chuckled softly, my voice chuckling. "No fire escape," it said, like it had read my mind. I covered my mouth again. Ellis said, "Do you have anything, a weapon? Something heavy?" My eyes darted around. Bed, lamp, a small bedside table, my suitcase still half unpacked. I grabbed the lamp, yanking the cord from the wall. The base was heavy ceramic. My hand cramped around it. The door handle turned again. The lock held. The voice whispered, close, intimate. I don't like the chain. It hurt the door. A sudden bang came from the front of the flat. Distant, but sharp, like the chain had finally snapped. I flinched, lamp raised. Ellis heard it too. Was that your front door? I couldn't answer. My mind was a blur of panic. Then footsteps, real footsteps, moved through my flat. Slow, measured steps on wood. Not the knocking anymore. Actual walking. My blood ran cold. Something was inside. The footsteps paused in the hallway, outside my bedroom. A soft exhale. Then my own voice, right outside the door, whispered, I'm coming in. The handle turned sharply this time, more forceful. The lock held, but it strained. I raised the lamp higher, arms trembling. Ellis's voice was frantic. There, in like minutes. Don't open it. Don't talk. Just hold. The bedroom door shuddered as something leaned into it. Once, twice, not slamming, pressing, testing the structure, like a person testing ice. The wood creaked. My shoulders pressed harder against it, though I knew that was nothing compared to whatever weight was on the other side. Then the pressure stopped. Silence, so sudden it rang in my ears. I stood there, lamp raised, breath shallow. Ellis whispered, Are you okay? Is it gone? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because in the silence, I heard a sound that made my stomach drop into my shoes. A soft scratching, not at the handle, not at the edge, at the bottom of the door, like something was trying to fit through the gap. My eyes dropped, and there, in the thin shadow under the door, something shifted. A shape pressed against the crack like a finger, except it was too thin, too long, like a strip of shadow cut into the shape of a hand. It wriggled, searching, flattening itself. The scratching became a slow, patient rasp. I backed away, lamp still raised, my feet tangling in the bedsheet that hung too low. The shadow hand slid farther under the door. It was attached to something darker beyond sight, like smoke that had learned to have bones. It reached, stretching, feeling the air. Then it tapped the floorboards. Knock. Just one. Right there, inside the room. My lungs seized. Ellis made a strangled noise on the phone. What's happening? Talk to me. I couldn't. The shadow hand tapped again. Knock. Like it was practicing. Like it was counting. Then it began to slide faster. More of it flowing under the door. A ribbon of darkness flattening itself through a space that should have been too small. I stumbled toward the window, panic overriding everything. My hand fumbled with the latch. Outside, distant sirens wailed faint, far. Not close enough. The darkness under the door thickened. A second shadow hand appeared, then a third, all too long, too thin, moving like spiders made of night. They spread across the floor, feeling, searching, and then, impossibly, their fingertips began to lift. They rose like smoke that decided it didn't need air to hold it up. The shadows climbed the air, reaching toward me. The voice outside the door, no longer pretending to be anyone, whispered with a hint of impatience. Midnight is when you can trade places. My hand froze on the window latch. What? I hadn't meant to speak. The word fell out of my mouth like a coin dropped down a drain. The voice outside laughed softly. You answered, it purred. So now you get to learn. The shadows in the room responded to my voice like dogs to a whistle. They surged toward me. I yanked the window open, cold air slapping my face, rain misting in. Below, the street was too far. The lights looked distant and unreal, like a diorama. I turned back, lamp raised. The shadows had reached the bed now, crawling up the blanket, pooling and rising as if they were building a body out of dark. A shape formed tall and wrong, with angles that didn't match bones, with limbs that stretched too long. Where its face should be was a smooth blankness, like someone had erased features with a wet cloth. Except for the mouth, a thin line appeared, then widened into a smile that didn't show teeth, just darkness inside darkness. It spoke with my voice again, soft and pleading. Please open the door. The absurdity of it, begging me to open the door, while it was already in the room, made my mind lurch. Then I understood. It didn't want the door open because it needed to enter. It wanted the door open because something else needed to leave. The shape moved closer, gliding without footsteps. The air around it felt colder, heavier. My skin prickled. Ellis was shouting my name through the phone. I dropped it somewhere near the bed, the speaker muffled. His voice sounded far away, like a radio in another apartment. The shadow shape lifted one of its two long hands and pointed toward the bedroom door. Open, it said, in my mother's voice now, sharp and commanding. Open it right now. The shadows behind it rippled like a cloak. I gripped the lamp with both hands and swung. The ceramic base connected with something that felt like wet cloth over hard wire. The impact jolted my arms. The shape's head snapped to the side. For a second, the smile disappeared, and the room went colder. The shape turned back slowly, and the blank face rippled, as if it were trying to decide what expression to wear. Then the smile returned, wider. You can hit the year, it whispered, almost affectionate. But you can't stop it. The shadows behind it rose like waves. They reached for my wrists, my ankles, my throat, but not with claws, with familiarity, like hands that already knew where to hold. I stumbled backward onto the windowsill, rain slicking the wood. A siren grew louder outside, closer now, cutting through the night. The shape paused, head tilting like it was listening too. Then it moved fast, too fast, surging toward me like a dark tide. I didn't think. I threw myself out the window. Cold air ripped past me. My stomach floated. The building fell away. For a horrifying second, there was only weightlessness and rain, and the street far below rising too quickly. Then my fingers caught something, the edge of the window frame, A narrow ledge, my nails scraping paint. Pain shot through my hands. I slammed against the brick wall. Wind knocked out of me. I hung there, half outside, half in, arms shaking. Rain making everything slick. Inside the bedroom, the shadow shape stopped at the window and leaned forward. Its blank face hovered inches from mine, separated only by glass and air. It spoke quietly with my voice. "If you fall," it said, "I get to keep your name." My fingers slipped a fraction. Terror flooded me so hard it made me nauseous. I tried to pull myself back in, muscles screaming. My palms burned. The shape's hand rose slowly toward the open window, as if it could simply pluck me like fruit. Then a sound exploded through the flat, a heavy pounding on the front door, followed by a man's voice shouting, "Police, open up." The shadow shape froze. For the first time, it looked wrong-footed, not frightened, just recalculating. The air in the room shifted, like pressure releasing. The shadows on the floor trembled. The shape leaned closer to the window, voice low and urgent now. "You shouldn't have answered," it repeated. But this time, there was something sharp underneath it. "You gave me your voice. You gave me your attention. You gave me a place to stand." It smiled. "So I'll take something else." Behind it, the bedroom door creaked open, not because the lock had failed, because someone on the other side had opened it. My blood went icy. From the hallway, a voice called out faint, uncertain, "Hello, is anyone in there?" It wasn't a police officer. It was the woman across the hall. The neighbor. I saw her silhouette in the doorway, clutching something, maybe her phone, maybe a flashlight. Her face was pale in the dim light. Her eyes found the shadow shape by the window, and I watched, helpless, as recognition flickered across her expression. Horror, dread, resignation. She opened her mouth to scream. The shadow shape turned toward her, and it spoke with her voice, perfectly, before she made a sound. "Happy New Year," it said. The neighbor stumbled back, eyes wide. The shape moved, gliding toward her. The shadows poured after it, like a living cloak. I tried to shout. I tried to warn her. My throat refused. Outside, the police pounded again, louder. "Open the door, now." The neighbor backed into the hallway, shaking her head. "No, no." But the shadow shape's voice softened, warm and convincing. "It's okay," it crooned, in a voice that sounded like someone the neighbor trusted. "It's just me. I couldn't get in. I'm cold." The neighbor's expression wavered, confusion slipping in like fog. I saw her take a half step forward, drawn by that voice. The shape's mouth curved, and then the hallway lights flickered. Once, twice. On the third flicker, the hall went dark. Not like a bulb went out, like the darkness arrived. It rolled in thick and heavy, swallowing the corridor beyond the neighbor's doorway. The neighbor made a small, terrified sound, and the darkness behind her moved. Something tall and thin unfolded from it, another shape, another blank face, another smile. My stomach turned. There were more, police banged again. "Open up." The neighbor turned toward the pounding, and in that instant, she did the one thing she'd warned me not to do. She reached for her own door across the hall, fumbling, desperate to get away from the dark. And she opened it. The darkness surged. The tall shapes moved like they'd been invited. The neighbor screamed. Finally, a raw sound ripped from her throat, and the hallway swallowed it like a mouth closing. The police shouted again, but their voices sounded suddenly distant, muffled, as if the building itself had decided not to carry sound anymore. I hung outside my window, shaking violently, rain streaming down my face. My fingers felt numb. My arms screamed with strain. Inside, my bedroom was quiet. The shadow shape returned to the window and looked at me, patient. Then it leaned closer, and in my own voice, it whispered something that made my blood freeze solid. "Next year," it promised, "I'll knock with your hand." The police finally forced their way in. I heard the front door splinter, heard heavy boots, commands barked into radios. Flashlights swept through my living room, bright beams cutting the air. "Up here," someone shouted, noticing me hanging from the window. Hands grabbed me, strong arms hauling me inside. I collapsed onto the bedroom floor, soaking wet, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. A police officer knelt beside me, asking questions: name, injuries. What happened? I tried to speak, but my voice came out thin and wrong, like the sound had to travel too far to reach my mouth. Officers moved through the flat, checking rooms, sweeping corners, shining lights into closets. They found my chain broken, splinters on the floor, screw holes torn wide. No intruder, no forced entry beyond the chain, no footprints, no weapons. When an officer stepped into the hallway, his flashlight beam swept across the corridor and paused. "What the?" I sat up, stomach twisting, and followed his gaze. Across the hall, the neighbor's door was open. Her flat was dark. The officer called out, "Ma'am, are you all right?" No answer. He stepped inside. His flashlight beam moved, slow and cautious. Then I heard him inhale sharply. I crawled to the hallway, heart pounding. The neighbor's flat smelled like cold air and something faintly metallic. The living room was empty, but on the wall near her door, someone had written something in a substance so dark it looked like shadow. 3 words, tall and careful, like they'd been traced by a finger that didn't need ink. "Do not open." An officer muttered, "Jesus." They searched her flat, called her name, checked every room. She wasn't there. No signs of struggle, no blood, no broken windows, just an open door, and that warning on the wall, like a message left for whoever came next. The police took my statement in the early hours, while the city outside slowly sobered up, while the fireworks debris turned soggy in the gutters, while people stumbled home, laughing, kissing, promising themselves they'd do better this year. I told the officers what I could. I said there was knocking, A voice, a chain pulled loose. They exchanged looks that suggested they'd already decided what kind of story this was. Stress, alcohol, loneliness, New Year's hysteria. One of them asked gently if I'd been feeling unwell lately, if I'd been sleeping. I nodded because it was easier than arguing. They left around 4 in the morning, after advising me to stay with someone else for the night. Ellis arrived just after, pale and furious and terrified, and packed me into his car without letting me speak much. He kept glancing at the building as if expecting it to watch us leave. In his flat across town, warmth and light felt wrong, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I slept in short bursts on his sofa, each time jolting awake, convinced I'd heard knocking. The next day, New Year's Day, was gray and quiet. The world felt hungover. People moved slower. Even the sky seemed tired. Ellis made coffee and tried to act normal, tried to joke, tried to keep me grounded. But every time there was a sound in the hall, outside his flat, someone walking, a door closing, I flinched. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a notification from my building's group chat, something the landlord had insisted I join. A message from the landlord. Reminder, please keep communal doors shut at all times. We had an incident last night. Tenant in 3B is missing. Police have been informed. 3B, the neighbor across the hall. My stomach rolled. Ellis read over my shoulder and went pale. Oh my God. I scrolled further. Someone else had posted. Did anyone else hear knocking last night? Another reply. Yes. Thought it was teenagers. Didn't open. Heard screaming later. Then my grandmother used to warn about this. New Year's midnight. Don't answer knocks. Don't invite anything in. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. Ellis whispered, This is bigger than you. I stared at the screen, because there was another message from an unknown number. No name, no profile photo, just a text. Happy New Year. My breath caught. Ellis saw it and grabbed the phone, staring like he could will it to change. Another message arrived immediately after. You sound different today. I couldn't feel my fingers. Ellis started typing something furious, threatening, demanding to know who it was. Before he could hit send, a third message popped up. Don't talk to me. Ellis's thumb froze. Then a final message came in, and it wasn't words. It was an audio file. Ellis looked at me. Don't. But my hand moved anyway, trembling, pressing play. The speaker crackled once, and then my own voice filled the room, thin, breathy, terrified. Ellis, someone's outside my door. My throat closed. The audio continued, perfectly clear, like it had been recorded from inside my flat. And underneath my voice, faint but unmistakable, was that other voice, calm, close, amused. Open. Ellis slammed the phone down like it had burned him. We sat in silence, coffee cooling on the table, daylight pressing against the windows. Finally, Ellis said, "We go back. We get your things. We get you out." I should have agreed. I should have said yes immediately. But all I could think was the promise, whispered at the window. "Next year, I'll knock with your hand." I swallowed hard and forced myself to speak. "No," I said. My voice sounded normal. Too normal. Ellis frowned. "What do you mean, no?" I stared at my hands. They looked like my hands. But when I listened closely, when I held my breath, I could feel something else inside them, a faint twitch, like a muscle remembering a rhythm. "Rap, rap, rap." I whispered, barely audible. "It's not done." Ellis's face tightened. "Then what do we do?" I looked toward the front door of his flat, toward the hallway beyond it, then toward the clock on the wall. The hands moved steadily, indifferent. New Year's had already happened, but the year hadn't settled. And somewhere, behind some door in some hallway, something patient was still listening, waiting for someone to answer. If you made it to the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment and tell me. Have you ever heard knocking at the worst possible time and felt like it wasn't coming from a person? And one last thing before you go. Tonight, if your building creaks, if your walls settle, if you hear 3 slow knocks when the hour is wrong, don't answer. Don't ask who it is. And whatever you do, don't open the door